Everybody, welcome. We have Rebecca Monet from Zoracle Profiles, and today we're going to get her insights and some business advice. Rebecca, welcome.
Oh, it's good to be here, Lance. I love talking with you.
Oh, thanks. Me too. So, first question, right out of the gate. Why do you think 80% of franchisors never get past 50 units?
I have some strong beliefs on this. That's a really great question, Lance. If we took money off of the table, meaning that the underfunded stuff, right? I think there's two primary reasons franchisors never get past 50 units or so, or what we call a stage two franchise system. I think first is that every franchise system goes through predictable stages of growth. And within each of those stages of growth, there are measurable attributes having to do with management style, as an example, organizational structure, how formal their systems are, what are some of the current initiatives and goals of that franchisor, and of course, how involved that concept originator is. So not only are there predictable attributes of each of these five stages of growth, but there are predictable, measurable challenges, or what Neil Churchill called crises. And I don't care how great you are at franchising, you're going to bump up against these challenges and these crises. And those franchisors that are prepared for those crises and know how to navigate them will go to that next stage of growth. Many, however, don't navigate those crises, and so they will kind of stay or hover where they currently are, and in worst case scenarios, sometimes fall back to an earlier stage. So many never get past stage two. And two of the biggest crises of stage one and stage two are crises of leadership, where that wild, crazy entrepreneur franchisor has his or her head down, working in the minutia, the day to day of the business, or creating products or ideas. They're not able to get out of that and work on the strategy or lead franchisees in any kind of direction. And then the crises of autonomy is usually early stage franchisors will attract some really strong franchisees with, you know, across the board skills, right? And ability to take a risk and the love for being first to market. The challenge with that is they don't have a whole lot of need for the franchisor. So they'll be working autonomously over here on their own best practices. And so those early stage franchisees, when the franchisor is attempting to grow to the next stage, which is about consistency and systems and building that brand equity and ROI, when they're starting to move into that, those early stage franchisees are going, no, I kind of like it the way it was. I kind of like it where it was the wild, wild west, and I got to do what I wanted to do. So I think that's issue number one. Issue number two, um, assuming they're moving through those stages of growth properly, is the right fit, right? That they have a great business model as franchisors. They've tested it, they've proven it. It works in Tallahassee, it works in Tulsa. They have a viable market, meaning enough clients for that franchisee. And they may even have the perfect modeling technique to get the right location, right? But they didn't take the time to understand who the ideal franchisee is, who can run that business. So you have a great model, you got a great market, you got a great location, and you got a turkey for a franchisee. And then things kind of go sideways. So I think they're kind of things that go in tandem. We don't navigate the stages of growth and the crises thereof, and we're not doing a great job of picking the right franchisee to run that local market.
Right. And so just to make it easy for me to wrap my head around, can you kind of like list out those basic stages and the basic crisis that people go through?
Yes, of course. So there are five predictable stages of growth. Stage one is what we call an entrepreneurial franchisor. This is a highly dynamic, evolving franchise system wherein we're focusing on the product, that widget, that better something. This is where the franchisor is wearing a lot of hats, may have no employees or very few employees, but the focus is on the product. So typically, this is a franchisor that has less than 25 units. And then stage two is what we call a partnership business. And this is where that franchisor who's been wearing all these hats and investing in his own money chooses to do one of two things. They'll either bring on a strong operational person who will then go out to those early stage franchisees and elicit their best practices, and then we begin to memorialize that and create procedural manuals and ways that we can roll that out to our next wave of franchisees. It's a highly collaborative, strong partnership, both in-house with the franchisor plus with the franchisees. The structure of the company is beginning to change. The systems are beginning to be clearer. The value package is getting clearer. And the focus here is indeed on the best practices. So that's usually somewhere between 25 and 70 units. And this is where many franchisors get stuck, right, in that stage two. And then stage three is what we call a plug and play franchise organization. So this is where we've worked out the systems and processes. We understand our product mix. We may have even changed our product mix as franchisors. We're highly systematic, and all we need are franchisees that will embrace and leverage those systems. So we're looking for a higher complier. This isn't the hunter that we may have had initially. And the focus for the franchisor in three is on unit level economics. So here's where we start to roll out call centers, more local or regional marketing. This is where the franchisee becomes more of a technician and a manager and an operator. In stage four is where a franchisor has decided they want to become the dominant player. Usually they've gone out and they've gotten investor dollars. If they didn't do that in two, they'll be doing it at three, where they'll get private equity money or they'll go public in some way. And stage four is all about mergers, acquisitions, conversions. We call it an empire brand. So the goal is to dominate the market. Now you can imagine at this point, the founder is beginning to step out of the business and other management teams are in there. There's a lot of systems and processes in place, a lot of need for compliance. Usually the franchisor has a team of compliance officers and attorneys on board by now. And then five is where that franchisor has done one of two things. They're either a massive empire brand, and what's happened is they're not as agile, they're not as quick to be able to make decisions, they're not as innovative, simply because we got tons of people and a lot of silos that are going on, and we're beginning to lose a little bit of touch with the end user. So the franchisor will hit a reset button, right? At that point, where we talked about that a little bit earlier with Red Robin as an example. Or maybe not in this one. We talked about that offline, didn't we? So the idea here in five is there's a reset button that is hit. We have stockholders that are saying, why aren't we more profitable? So we're needing now to find ways that we can refresh the brand in some ways. So it becomes more innovative, more creative. One of an example of a stage four that became a five is years ago, 2005, Cendant, one of the largest franchisors in the world, went through this phase, and they ended up breaking their company up into several separate companies. The real estate companies went one direction, the travel another. the financial and tax services, another, the hotels, another. And then they were able to become more agile, separate businesses. Another example of a hybrid is a umbrella brand that has different size and different stages of growth companies underneath them. Neighborly brands, home franchise concept, outdoor living brands, and several others are examples of that, where it's an umbrella brand that provides centralization and support and all of that. But the brands within that are operating in many ways autonomously with the support of the umbrella brand. So those are kind of a 5-minute example of what those 5 stages of growth. And as I pointed out, within each stage of growth, there are crises and challenges that Zor is going to go through before they can go to that next level.
Right. And what do you see as attributes of struggling Zors?
So struggling Zors could be franchisors that are having franchisees struggling to comply with new systems and processes. So they're not embracing, they're not complying to create that kind of consistency. And so it's damaging the brand. So there's compliance issues. You have franchisees that may not be ramping up or performing as well. So your training and support costs begin to go up to support those C players to make them profitable. And this is usually a selection issue, right? That has happened. It's also a stage of growth issue in that we may not have as much support or training as we would like to provide to the ZOR simply because we don't have the resources to do that based on our stage of growth. The other issue is validation. And, if you're a broker and you're listening to this, you can kind of understand that validation will make or break a system. So if you have an early stage franchisee that loved it when it was wild, wild west and he could do whatever he wanted, right? And now we're in stage 3 and we're trying to herd those cats and bring them into, they have to all do the same thing. Those early stage franchisees may not be happy with that. They kind of liked it the way it was. And so they could be pushing back and they could be not validating well when a prospective franchisee is reaching out. Worst case scenario, there could be litigation issue because we have a poor fitting franchisee or we're going through this stage of growth. They were a good fit. Now they're not a good fit. So we could have some compliance issues, litigation issues, retention issues, simply because people are not a good fit or based on the crises we're going through, that franchisee doesn't have the adaptability to go through those crises with a franchisor.
Right. And so what would you see as the attributes of successful franchises?
The successful franchisor or franchisee, because I think that in many ways
Well, they probably do overlap, but I would be curious because what I want people to do is identify things within themselves and accentuate them, or maybe take care of them so that they can walk away with some understanding and move. But there is both. You're right. There's franchisees and franchisors.
So for me, I love to look at what causes someone to be successful. It's always about the two pieces, the franchisor and the franchisee, and the compatibility there. And I truly believe every franchise system is unique. Their culture is unique, their stage of growth is unique, their value package is unique, what is required to build that business is different. So there's no cookie cutter franchise system, therefore no cookie cutter franchisee. It's just, does this individual fit within this franchise system? But there are, to your point, kind of some attributes you have to have as a franchisee or a business owner in general. And those are markers around what might be called grit. So there are 6 primary markers around grit, including things like achievement drive, commitment, initiative, the ability to get out and do what you need to do, even though you don't have the knowledge to do so yet, or you don't want to do it, right? But you still do that. Adaptability. If that didn't work, are you willing to go around the mountain, under the mountain, over the mountain? Do you have that kind of tenacity and flexibility and adaptability to do that? Optimism. Folks that see no future, see no hope, or see it in a dim light are not going to work as hard or be as committed to something. So there has to be a certain level of optimism a prospective franchisee needs, or any franchisee needs. And without it, we see dramatic drop in performance. So, and a couple of the markers that we're really paying attention to, Lance, has to do with adaptability. We're coming out of COVID, 3 years of this crazy stuff. And I'm watching these adaptability markers dropping, meaning people are less adaptable today than they were pre-COVID or even 5 or 10 years ago. They're less tenacious. They're less committed. They're more fearful. So these are markers we're keeping close eye on, because these are required to do anything, whether it's run a marathon or grow a business. You need that grit, and there are many markers within that, including commitment, initiative, adaptability, optimism, achievement, drive, etc.
Right. And so, the Zoracle profiles actually help people zero in on their stage. They help people zero in on these crises, these markers, and really find the people that are working well for them. But it's like also
Mhm.
you have, your internal staff being able to communicate and keep things collaborative and smooth, hiring new people, finding that right fit for you. I know as doing the broker and helping to find stuff, it was definitely helpful for me to give this to clients. I took it myself. I think I even had family members take it, You can
Yeah.
see, because the
It,
more you understand each other, the more things just run smooth. Like if you understand each other, it's harder to be frustrated when we're different and approach things different. And so it just creates this common ground, which
Mhm.
increases communication, and you talked about uh you know being able to communicate in words. So like when it comes to these different profiles that people come out in, there's different words that are going to resonate with them, and if people use those words on their websites and their marketing materials, they can start attracting their ideal client directly from their marketing, uh just because of the words they pick. Can you talk on that?
Oh my gosh, this is such a fabulous topic, because we are affected neurologically and physiologically by words and by, you know, certain images and sounds. We are desperately affected by that. It either will attract us or deter us from doing certain things. I'll give you a crazy, silly example. It tells you a little bit about me, right? Years ago, I did a ton of traveling and teaching, 3-day workshops on many topics, including neurolinguistics. But this was in my 30s, when I was still cute and adorable. And I hated the word cute. Anytime somebody used the word cute on me, I would just shut down. It was one of those things where I felt it was insulting. It didn't in any way describe that I was a professional, that I was smart. Cute was a puppy. Cute was a little girl in pigtails. Cute was not a woman who's running a business, who's a professional, who's a behavioral scientist. So anytime somebody would say that's a cute outfit, or you look so cute, or you're cute, I would literally shut down. So I had an example of that, where one day I was supposed to make a presentation. I'm in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and I had packed on the fly, and I forgot to pack a pair of shoes to match my dress, which for a woman is like the end of the world, right? So I had to make a quick dash to the mall to buy a pair of shoes to go with my dress before I had to do this presentation. And I'm trying on shoes, and the guy that's helping me with my shoes says to the shoes that I'm really loving, he said, "They're so cute." Instantly, I shut down. I was not buying anything from him. I would rather go barefoot than buy a pair of cute shoes. It just wasn't going to happen. It was this visceral feel where in my mind it meant a certain thing. And to this day, I still can feel that moment of someone who said something which he thought was going to be productive and have me buy a pair of shoes, and it had 100% opposite effect, right? There are other words, that really trigger us positively, and some words that trigger us in a negative way. Can I give you another example, Lance?
All the time you want.
All right. So I had a individual approach me a number of years ago who wanted to do a partnership. And I said, great, let's talk about it. Tell you what, do a little bit of research, come back, give me a presentation, and we'll discuss it. So he comes back, and his entire presentation, Lance, was about we, he and I, have a common enemy, and together we can squash that enemy. Now, if you study the Zoracle assessment, I'm what we call a societal. I'm a kumbaya person. I'm all about harmony and justice and peace. And I'm all about contributing, making a difference, edifying others. I'm a kumbaya. I didn't even know I had an enemy. I can't imagine someone not loving me. I'm a societal. I can't imagine not loving others, right? So when he said we have a common enemy, my brain went into what is he talking about? But it also made me instantly realize that we saw the world in a completely different way and would not make good partners, right? And
Mhm.
so I chose to walk away from that. So knowing who your individual is, what's important to them, how they think, how they make decisions, what attracts them is going to help you engage them better and use those words and those stories and the processes that will get them through that to a positive outcome. In our case, that's to buy a business, right? But we don't always know what that is. We don't always know what those things are. And that's part of the reason for the assessment. It gives us those words. It gives us that insight of what potentially could have a deal go south for no other reason than we stepped on a toe, right?
Right. And I know that we have a link next to this video, and one of the things we're going to do is have people take the Zoracle profile, and we're going to get them the marketing blueprint and the trigger words so that they'll have those words and they can understand how to communicate. Because I know this has probably never happened, but you could have somebody who is a franchise representative that could say stuff that shuts down a client that's a good client like right away just by the choice of words. Like, and they might be like confused, like, I don't know what went wrong. I don't know how that even happened. I was so nice. I mean, I said that their outfit looked cute, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it just shuts everything down. So that is very important. And those words are different by each of the profiles, correct?
Right. That is correct, which is why, as a franchise broker, if you're using the tool and you understand that individual and what their fears are and what their pain points are, and words that naturally allows that individual to absorb what you're sharing and to move to that next step, then sometimes when we do that handoff to a franchise development person at a particular franchise system, if they don't understand it, they can step on toes. They can step on toes and not even know what they did, and somebody will begin to ghost them. We had a broker some time back who did just this. She passed off a lead to a franchise system that was in the hair care business. And the prospective franchisee, was what we call an emulator. So an emulator is about prestige and about image and about success and money. They love innovation and challenge and creativity. So these are the up and coming individuals, but they're attracted to certain things, but they also have certain fears. An emulator has a fear of looking inadequate, that inadequacy being pointed out, and then they're going to be embarrassed. They're going to be humiliated. They're more sensitive than others about inadequacies being pointed out, that they're going to be embarrassed. And ultimately, they have a fear of failure. So these are folks, because of these fears, that motivates them to work harder, to do more. However, when our broker passes lead over to this company, the development person didn't pay attention to, this is an emulator with these fears and will be triggered when you step on those particular triggers. And they decided, based on the first blush, that this candidate didn't have enough money to do a 3-pack, which is what he wanted, 3 locations. And basically, in a very rude way, said, I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to accept this. We could maybe do one deal with you, one location, and then based on your performance, we'll consider doing a second and third location. Suffice it to say, that candidate disappeared. They ghosted the broker, they ghosted the development person, and fortunately, the broker understood, went back to the assessment. Oh my goodness, it looks like this is what happened. The development person accidentally stepped on his inadequacy fear, right? His embarrassment issues. And so she was able to go in and rescue that deal by building that person back up, and then leading them down the path. Never mind, the development person underestimated our emulator, because the emulators are well connected and they usually have some large financial resources, even if it's not in their own bank account. They have ways of getting it. And that development person just didn't understand that candidate and could have lost that deal if he hadn't had a strong broker that understood and was able to rally and get them where they needed to go.
Right. Well, could you share with us, just so that we can wrap our mind around it, like with the main profiles, what are a few of the fears and triggers for each of the profiles, just so we can understand?
Yeah, so the emulator, the 3 fears, fear of inadequacy, fear of being embarrassed, fear of failure. With the achiever, their fear is that they won't be in control and that they will not be able to leave a legacy, which is what's important to them. And then the third thing is that they won't be the best. So they're not going to go into a system if they can't see themselves being number 1 or number 2 pretty quickly. So they have to be the best uh, and unique, of course. They have to be in control, and they must leave a legacy, right? Something behind that says, I've been here and I built this business. For the societal, the fear is primarily that they will be ignorant, that they missed something, they didn't see something, they didn't read something, they didn't understand something, that they're ignorant in some way. And that in turn will have someone, a broker, a franchise development person, manipulate them into buying a business that the worst case scenario will not allow them to fulfill their purpose, that business does not have a cause, it does not have a purpose. So for them, it's ignorance, manipulation, and not being able to contribute or live on purpose. And then for the belonger, their fear is that we will put them in a business that will separate them from their family. Family is more important, friends are more important than this business. So their fear is that this business is going to take away from just that. Their other fear is that they're going to be irresponsible, that you're going to ask them to liquidate their 401k or take out a second mortgage to buy this other business. So they have a fear of being financially irresponsible, and that's something that would never happen. So these fears you have to be aware of, or you step on them, right? Accidentally. And then that person begins to say, well, maybe franchising is not for me. Maybe I should keep my job. And they'll begin to um, step away.
Right. And your emulator is kind of emulating achievers, and your belonger is somewhat similar to a societal. I mean, they're all really kind of like they fit together in a nice square box.
They do. It is a quadrant model. That's exactly true. The emulator has some attributes that are similar to the societal. Societal and belonger have some similar attributes, and the emulator is emulating the achiever. And candidly, none of us are just one of these things, right? We're kind of a recipe of all of these things, but the dominant value set will affect 70 to 80% of our decisions. So it's important to know how this individual makes decisions. And if you understand their value systems, you got the answer.
Right. And so what are some I always love metrics. So do you have any like research and metrics that you've kind of picked up through the years of doing this that kind of give people some ideas on how this affects them or, where things are?
So there, yeah, we have a ton of metrics. Several of them are things that we provide directly to the franchisor, where we've looked at the evolution of a franchise system, the various stages of growth, and then we've also brought in customer satisfaction results, like through FBR, and then the psychographics of the franchisees that are suggesting they're satisfied or not satisfied. And we were able to create some models or some correlations where we could see as a franchise system evolved and changed how that individual would need to also change. Some of it is obvious, right? Some of it is obvious in that if it's an earlier stage franchise system, then they're looking for someone with strong marketing and sales skills, kind of a trailblazer, pioneer kind of individual. But as we grow, then it's more about that repeat business. The brand is recognizable. They're going to be coming in the door. So now it becomes more of an HR exercise or management exercise or operational. So some of that. But some of the other things that we noticed is what we call learning saturation, which simply means sometimes the franchisor is doing some training, especially that upfront training, and a franchisee becomes saturated and cannot take in one more piece of information. And then they launch and they have forgotten 2/3 of what they've learned in training. So there's a right way to roll out training, and there's a right way to roll out various initiatives like a new POS system, right? Or a new reporting mechanism. If you bring those in at the wrong time, it can disrupt the uh, franchisees in such a way that their production actually goes down and they become disgruntled and dissatisfied. So, lots of metrics about the evolution and how that affects satisfaction and how that affects who that franchisee needs to be based on where we are in that evolution.
Nice. Do you have time for two more questions?
Yes, for you,
Okay.
anything,
No.
man.
Thanks. These are all about engagement, and I just think that your expertise will be very valuable to people. So they're about engagement and saving deals. What are some things that you've noticed that people can do or use or know that will help them if they're actively working with a client and something goes wrong to re-engage, and connect with them? Could be rapport or anything, but how can people like engage and keep that going with an active client?
So I think first and foremost, learn everything you can about their values. Every decision is based on our values, from what we're going to wear to who we're going to marry to how much money we're going to make to how much we're going to weigh. Every decision is based on our hierarchy of value. So as a a franchise broker, franchise development person, or even an employer working with an employee, discover all you can about the values. We give those to you in the Zoracle tool. We'll tell you exactly what their values are. We'll tell you exactly what that hierarchy is. And the more you know about that, the more you can engage that person and understand that person at a very heartfelt place. If they're going south for one reason or they're disengaged, it's usually because you haven't connected at that level. You haven't built that level of trust and that level of rapport. And the way we do that is by mirroring back, matching and mirroring and reflecting back those values that we understand. An example I gave a little earlier, my personal experience of someone who wanted to partner with me, who triggered me with certain words. He could have done something completely different. He could have brought in my values. He says, Rebecca, working together, we could make a bigger impact. We could have a greater contribution. We could edify others. He could have used my words, my values, and I would have been convinced to work with him. Had he taken the time to understand what's important to me, in this case, what's important to your candidate, if we understand that and we reflect it back, we build a more intimate relationship with that individual. And it'll allow us to get them where they need to go, where they want to go more effectively, and of course, more quickly.
Right. And you mentioned values. Does understanding people's identity of themselves play a part in any of this?
Yeah, I totally agree. It does. It brings up that whole conversation of do we always see ourselves the way others see us, right? Um, and sometimes that isn't happening for one reason or another. We either shroud parts of us, we're embarrassed about certain parts of us, we puff up. So it's important that when we're working with people, that we are able to see how they see themselves. You may see them one way and be interacting with them, and you may even be accurate, right? You may even be accurate. But if they're perceiving themselves completely different, they're seeing themselves as accomplished and successful and wise and um, all of those things, and you're seeing them at a place that says, in this area you're struggling, or let me help you, I'm going to give you some advisement. But if we talk down to them, we patronize them, we don't speak their language, then we lose them. We lose their respect. So we have to understand not only who they really are, but who they perceive themselves to be, which could be very different.
Yeah, I see a lot of people that you could have a client that could do very well with the brand. It's just that there was things said that triggered something that when you're starting out, you're on a fragile environment because they don't know you that well and they're not really that committed to anything. And so building those connection points is what holds people in, and so
Mhm.
the next question I had about engagement is probably a big one, which is, so how do you re-engage with somebody who's gone dark? They're
Yeah,
not communicating.
yeah. So again, I would go back to the values and I would go back to the meta programs to see what possibly made them go south, so to speak. Almost always, it'll be one of three things. Somebody stepped on one of their fears and it wasn't addressed. And so going, all right, I'm scared. This is a big decision and I'm shutting down, right? It is a big decision. We got to get out of our comfort zone into the learning zone to be able to buy a business. It's a big decision. So if you've triggered one of their fears, it's going to negatively affect that relationship. And secondly, we didn't understand their values. They can't see what you are showing them or that this process is in alignment with their values. People will spend time, money, and energy. They will not disengage if you are in alignment with their values and that your process is leading them to having more of those values. So that's usually the second issue. The third issue is you don't understand their meta programs, meaning the filters that their brain is using to make decisions, including showing up on that next appointment, right? Or finishing that exercise you asked them to do in your due diligence process. You didn't understand their meta programs, right? So let me give you an example of that. One of the meta programs is what we call internal versus external, um, meaning I know when something is good for me externally by reading testimonials, by talking to franchisees, by looking at spreadsheets, by reading articles. So it's external, or I'm talking to my accountant or my attorney in some ways. So external. Others are internal. They kind of get a gut reaction, a feel for it. There's no real criteria to it, but a gut feel. So if you're working with someone who's an external and you're not giving them the spreadsheets, or they're not going out and doing store visits, and they're not seeing those testimonials, or if they are and they're not hearing what they want to hear, then they're going to disappear. So by knowing this is an external, you can provide some of that external. You can find out who they're getting advisements from, possibly include them in the due diligence process, and you can save that deal. So always look at those three things, right? I think there's probably a fourth, but it kind of overlaps with the values, which is what we call pain points or splatter dots. Often people will disappear because we haven't addressed the pain points. So let me give you an example. I had a broker who had an excellent client, happened to be an achiever societal individual, and he could not get this individual across the finish line. Had the money, had the drive, had everything possible, but could not get him across the finish line. And he was distraught. And we talked about it. We looked at the assessment, and this guy had a major pain point around the word contribution. He was looking for a business that would allow him to make a difference and to contribute. My broker thought, well, why doesn't he just make a whole lot of money with these concepts that I have shown him? And then he can contribute money to his causes or his church or whatever. But that is not what this gentleman meant by contribution. He wanted to contribute to the ZOR, and he wanted to have a impactful way to contribute to his community. And every business that the broker was showing him was simply about scaling, replicating money to the bank. He could not see how this made a difference in his community. So he lost the deal by not paying attention to one of those values. So I know that was a long-winded way of saying, first you got to know why it went south, and then use those same words, those same value words, that same meta program in your email to them, in the messages you leave, and in your future communication to bring them back. And I'm a big believer in sincere apologies. Joe, I messed up. I wasn't paying attention. I didn't hear you. There's no reason we can't flat out say something is off here, and I think I messed up. Help me figure out where I messed up, and let's get you back on track.
Yeah, that willing to say I'm sorry, you were
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Could be a $30,000 apology.
yeah.
So definitely do that. And we could probably do a whole series just on how psychology helps people move to the next step or blocks people from moving to the next step, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that was really great. There's so many things that people can learn. I think this is so valuable, so important. I would just encourage people to check it out. I've used these assessments. I've used them myself. I've used them on with clients, family, everything. It just creates a better understanding of the world that helps you operate more effectively with everybody you interact with. So excellent work, Rebecca. Always love talking with you. I would say anybody who's listening to this, you can go to the button on the side here. I'll send you to a form so you can get in contact with them and let you test out the Zoracle profile. And everybody that does that is going to get that marketing blueprint and those trigger words because we do not want to step on those pain points and trigger words.
Mm-mm.
And they can also help bring people, the right people to you by the words you're choosing. Anything else you'd like to add, Rebecca?
No, I think we covered it. I mean, it comes back to that responsibility to our client and to our franchisor to do what's right and best by both. And um, ultimately, this is just a tool to kind of help facilitate that. End result is everybody wins, right? The franchisor wins, the prospective franchisee wins, we as development people or brokers win by taking a little time to truly know your candidate.
Mhm. Thank you very much. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you, Lance.